The Marvel Cinematic Universe is heading toward a moment that could completely change everything fans thought they understood about the future of the MCU. Because the latest statements coming from the Russo brothers make it painfully clear that Avengers Doomsday is not just another massive superhero crossover. It is the beginning of an entirely new era that could rebuild Marvel from the ground up. Right now, the atmosphere around Marvel honestly feels intense, uncertain, and strangely exciting at the same time. Ever since Avengers Endgame released, people have constantly questioned whether Marvel could ever reach that emotional peak again. Some fans believe the franchise lost direction after Iron Man's sacrifice. Others felt the multiverse storyline became too scattered and disconnected. But suddenly, after these recent updates, all those random projects, alternate timelines, and separate character arcs are starting to feel like pieces of one gigantic puzzle. The Russos are reportedly planning something much bigger than another battle against a powerful villain. They want Avengers Doomsday to become the film that reshapes the emotional structure of the entire MCU while also setting the foundation for a massive soft reboot after Secret Wars finally changes reality itself forever. One of the biggest problems Marvel faced after Endgame was the complete absence of a proper Avengers movie connecting the universe together. Earlier MCU phases always had that sense of momentum because every few years the heroes would unite, clash emotionally, grow together, and then separate into their own stories again. That formula kept the franchise connected. It gave audiences a feeling that every project mattered to a larger narrative. But after Endgame, things started feeling fragmented. Characters were spread across streaming shows, cosmic adventures, alternate universes, and standalone stories that barely acknowledged each other. Some projects focused on mythology. Others explored multiversal chaos. A few films felt almost disconnected from the MCU entirely. Slowly, fans began feeling like Marvel's foundation had started breaking apart. Now, according to multiple reports, Avengers Doomsday is finally going to solve that issue in the most dramatic way possible. Instead of simply gathering heroes for another giant action sequence, the film will reportedly force every major corner of the MCU to collide emotionally and ideologically. The Russo brothers apparently want this movie to feel darker, more mature, and emotionally heavier than anything Marvel has attempted since Infinity War and Endgame completely dominated global cinema. What makes this even more fascinating is the emotional direction Marvel seems ready to explore with its older heroes moving forward. The Russo brothers recently hinted that parenthood and family responsibility will become central themes in the next Avengers era, and honestly, that detail alone reveals a lot about the tone they are chasing. Think back to Tony Stark in Endgame. Becoming a father completely changed his perspective. Suddenly, saving the universe was not just about heroism anymore. He had a family waiting for him at home. He had something deeply personal to lose. That emotional vulnerability made every decision feel painful and real. Marvel now appears ready to bring that same maturity into multiple major characters throughout Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. Several heroes are reportedly being written from the perspective of people trying to protect children, families, or entire legacies instead of simply protecting the world. That shift could massively change the emotional weight of the MCU. When characters have personal lives attached to every dangerous decision, the stakes naturally become stronger. Every sacrifice hurts more. Every battle feels terrifying. Every possible death suddenly carries emotional consequences that audiences can genuinely feel instead of simply watching another temporary superhero disaster unfold across the screen. At the center of this entire multiversal collapse stands Dr. Doom. And from everything currently being reported, Marvel is preparing to make him one of the most dangerous and morally layered villains the MCU has ever seen. What makes Doom especially terrifying is not just his intelligence or power, but the possibility that parts of his argument may actually make sense. According to growing leaks surrounding Avengers Doomsday, Dr. Doom will challenge the morality of Marvel's heroes directly. He will supposedly expose how repeated interference with timelines, alternate realities, and multiversal events helped create incursions and universal destruction across existence itself. In other words, Doom may not present himself as a simple conqueror trying to dominate reality. He may genuinely believe the Avengers caused the collapse, consuming the multiverse. That immediately creates a much more compelling conflict, because audiences could understand his reasoning even while fearing his methods. Marvel rarely allows villains to carry arguments this emotionally strong. If the Russo brothers execute this properly, Dr. Doom could become the kind of antagonist who divides audiences completely. Some viewers may actually agree with his perspective, and that possibility alone could make Avengers Doomsday feel unlike any previous MCU film audiences have experienced before. Things become even darker once reports about internal conflict among the heroes themselves start entering the conversation. According to several insiders, Avengers Doomsday may introduce a new ideological war inside the MCU. Something spiritually similar to Civil War, but emotionally far more devastating. Certain heroes may actually begin agreeing with Dr. Doom's warnings about the multiverse. Doctor Strange is rumored to be one of the major characters caught in this philosophical conflict after witnessing incursions and collapsing realities firsthand. Wanda Maximoff could also return, carrying enormous guilt connected to the destruction caused by her powers and choices. If both Strange and Wanda start believing Doom's methods might prevent total annihilation, the Avengers could fracture into competing factions instead of simply uniting against one villain. Imagine the emotional intensity of heroes questioning whether the Avengers themselves are responsible for countless universes dying. That changes everything. Suddenly, the conflict is no longer about aliens invading Earth or another machine threatening humanity. The battle becomes ideological. It becomes personal. Heroes would be fighting over who deserves control of reality itself. Honestly, that sounds exactly like the kind of mature storytelling Marvel desperately needed after years of lighter projects that sometimes struggled to feel emotionally connected or narratively meaningful. Another major element reportedly playing a gigantic role in Avengers Doomsday is the TVA. And if the current rumors are accurate, this organization could become the first major casualty of Dr. Doom's rise to power. Several reports claim Doom launches a devastating attack against the TVA during the events of the film, and the consequences are supposedly catastrophic. That possibility alone completely changes the tone of the movie, because the TVA currently represents the final system maintaining order across infinite timelines. If Doom destroys or corrupts that structure, the multiverse could descend into total chaos almost instantly. What makes these rumors even more shocking is the suggestion that Marvel may finally be ready to embrace permanent consequences again. One major criticism surrounding recent MCU projects was the feeling that characters constantly survived impossible situations without meaningful damage. But if Avengers Doomsday truly delivers large-scale deaths, erased timelines, and irreversible destruction during the TVA assault, then this movie could become one of the darkest entries Marvel has ever produced. The Russo brothers understand how to balance tragedy with spectacle better than almost anyone working in blockbuster filmmaking today, and this storyline feels perfectly designed to push that strength to its absolute limit while emotionally devastating audiences around the world. At the same time, The future waiting beyond all this destruction may actually become even more exciting for longtime Marvel fans. According to multiple industry reports, Secret Wars is expected to function as a massive soft reboot that reorganizes Marvel's fractured realities into one unified universe. That means audiences could finally witness a world where the Avengers, Fantastic Four, and X-Men all exist together naturally inside the same timeline instead of being separated by awkward multiversal explanations. Just imagine how different the MCU would suddenly feel if every major team operated in the same New York simultaneously. Street-level heroes, cosmic explorers, mutants, sorcerers, and government-backed teams could all collide organically in ways Marvel simply could not attempt before. But what makes this setup truly interesting is the conflict it naturally creates. Reports suggest Marvel does not want these teams becoming best friends immediately. Instead, they will reportedly carry competing philosophies, distrust, and territorial tensions. When a global threat appears, the Avengers may believe they should lead the response because of their history protecting Earth, while the X-Men could argue that mutant-related threats belong under their authority alone. Those internal clashes could give future MCU storytelling an entirely fresh identity moving forward after Secret Wars completely reshapes Marvel reality forever. Honestly, that might be the smartest decision Marvel could possibly make right now, because audiences are clearly craving emotional complexity again. For years, superhero movies mainly relied on larger explosions, bigger armies, and increasingly massive visual spectacle to raise stakes. But eventually, that formula starts losing impact. The idea of multiple heroic factions disagreeing about how to save the world creates a much richer storytelling environment than another giant sky beam threatening humanity. If Marvel successfully rebuilds the MCU around conflicting perspectives instead of simple good versus evil narratives, the franchise could suddenly feel unpredictable again. Imagine political disagreements between Sam Wilson and Reed Richards, philosophical arguments between Charles Xavier and Doctor Strange, or rising tensions between ordinary civilians and mutants becoming more powerful every year. Those conflicts would make the MCU feel alive in a completely different way. They would also allow Marvel to explore themes like prejudice, responsibility, fear, leadership, and public trust on a much deeper level. The Russo brothers seem to understand that audiences who grew up with the MCU are older now. Fans still want spectacle, but they also want emotional and ideological weight supporting that spectacle. Everything currently being discussed around Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars suggests Marvel may finally be evolving alongside its audience instead of endlessly repeating familiar formulas from previous phases. But the most unbelievable part of these reports involves the final act of Secret Wars itself, because if the rumors are accurate, Marvel is preparing the biggest live-action crossover event comic book cinema has ever seen. Multiple insiders claim the climax could feature heroes and variants pulled from decades of Marvel movies, television shows, and alternate universes. That means audiences may witness characters nobody expected sharing the same battlefield during one gigantic Avengers Assemble moment. Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider has reportedly been discussed internally. Older Punisher variants may appear from previous adaptations. There are even growing whispers surrounding a live-action debut for Miles Morales during this multiversal finale. Just imagine theaters erupting if Miles swings onto the screen beside different Spider-Man variants, while Avengers from entirely separate realities charge into battle around him. It sounds completely insane, but after No Way Home and Deadpool and Wolverine shattered expectations, honestly, nothing feels impossible anymore. The real challenge will be ensuring these appearances carry emotional purpose instead of becoming empty nostalgia. Thankfully, reports suggest the Russo brothers are extremely aware of that danger and want every cameo, variant, and returning character to support the story emotionally rather than distracting audiences with meaningless fan service moments throughout the final battle. Fans are also becoming increasingly optimistic because of recent information surrounding Marvel's marketing strategy for these upcoming films. According to industry chatter, the studio understands that audiences no longer respond emotionally to trailers built entirely around random explosions and empty hype moments. Apparently, the Russo brothers are pushing for story-driven marketing focused heavily on character motivations, emotional consequences, and difficult moral choices connected to the collapse of the multiverse. That approach honestly makes perfect sense because Marvel's greatest moments were never only about visual spectacle. People connected emotionally to Steve Rogers refusing to abandon Bucky, Tony Stark confronting his mortality, and Peter Parker sacrificing his personal happiness to protect innocent lives. If Avengers Doomsday successfully recaptures that emotional sincerity while still delivering the gigantic cinematic scale audiences expect, then the MCU could genuinely experience one of the greatest comeback stories in blockbuster history. Right now, everything depends on execution. Marvel already possesses iconic characters, talented filmmakers, decades of comic mythology, and millions of fans desperately hoping to feel that old excitement again. If even half these reports become reality, the next few years could completely redefine superhero storytelling on the biggest cinematic stage imaginable and restore Marvel's dominance once again. The moment I started connecting all the rumors, leaks, and multiverse clues surrounding Avengers Doomsday, one question kept coming back to my mind. What if Marvel isn't bringing back Steve Rogers just once? What if the collapse of reality itself creates the perfect opportunity for 3 different Steve Rogers variants to exist at the same time? And honestly, the more I looked at the pieces, the more this theory started feeling less like wishful thinking and more like something that could actually happen. Doomsday is expected to be a story about broken timelines, collapsing universes, and Doctor Doom trying to reshape existence according to his own vision. Doom doesn't just want power. He wants control over reality itself. He wants to merge countless timelines together and build what he believes is a perfect world, a reality without chaos, without uncertainty, and most importantly, without anyone capable of challenging him. But whenever someone tries to play God in Marvel, reality always pushes back. As universes begin crashing into each other and the barriers between timelines start falling apart, different versions of the same people suddenly become capable of existing together. That's where this theory becomes incredibly interesting, because among all Marvel heroes, there may be one individual whose existence is tied to nearly every important timeline: Steve Rogers. Not one Steve, not 2, but 3 completely different versions of Steve Rogers, each representing a different path, a different choice, and a different piece of what made Captain America such a legendary hero. The first Steve Rogers in this theory is the one we already know. The old man sitting quietly on that bench at the end of Endgame. The Steve who finally got his dance with Peggy Carter. The Steve who handed Sam Wilson the shield and seemed ready to leave the spotlight forever. Most fans assumed his story ended there, but what if it didn't? Think about it for a second. After returning to the past, Steve lived an entire lifetime that we never got to see. Decades passed, entire generations came and went. During all those years, do we really believe Steve Rogers simply ignored everything happening around him? This is a man who spent his entire life protecting people. Even after retirement, I can't imagine him completely turning away from the responsibility that defined him. My theory is that old Steve spent years quietly observing unusual timeline disturbances, small cracks at first, tiny anomalies that nobody else noticed. He wasn't fighting anymore. He wasn't throwing a shield, but he was watching, learning, understanding. As the multiverse became more unstable, Steve slowly realized something terrifying was approaching. By the time Doom's plan truly begins affecting reality, old Steve understands the threat better than almost anyone alive. He becomes less like Captain America and more like a guardian of history itself. Not a warrior, a witness. Someone who has seen timelines rise and fall and now carries knowledge that could save every universe. What makes old Steve fascinating is that he wouldn't need physical strength anymore. His greatest weapon would be experience. Imagine Avengers gathering together, desperate for answers, while reality collapses around them. Entire worlds disappearing, heroes arriving from broken universes, nobody understanding what's happening. Then, old Steve steps forward, calm, wise, carrying decades of memories nobody else possesses. He explains that Doom isn't merely attacking worlds, he's restructuring existence. Every timeline being erased is another piece of Doom's perfect reality falling into place. This version of Steve becomes the strategist of the movie, the mentor, the man connecting scattered heroes into a unified force. In many ways, he becomes a combination of Nick Fury and the Ancient One. He doesn't lead from the battlefield. He leads from understanding, and honestly, that feels like a natural evolution of his character. Steve Rogers always inspired people. Even before he became a super soldier, people followed him because of who he was. Now imagine that same man carrying an entire lifetime of wisdom. The emotional weight alone would be incredible. Every conversation would feel important because this Steve has already lived the ending. He knows what sacrifice costs. He knows what happiness looks like. Most importantly, he understands that time itself is running out. While younger heroes rush toward battle, old Steve quietly prepares them for the truth that defeating Doom may require the greatest sacrifice the multiverse has ever seen. Now let's talk about the second Steve Rogers, because this is where the emotional core of the movie could truly emerge. This Steve isn't old. This isn't the retired version from the bench. This is the younger Steve who remained in the past and built a life with Peggy Carter. The Steve who finally chose himself over duty. For years, fans have wondered what happened during that timeline. Did he have children? Did he grow old peacefully? Did he ever regret leaving the Avengers behind? This theory suggests Avengers Doomsday finally answers those questions. Imagine meeting a Steve Rogers who actually got everything he wanted. A home, a family, a future, no endless wars, no alien invasions, no cosmic disasters, just life, real life. The kind of life he dreamed about before becoming Captain America. We may even see him holding a child, showing audiences that he truly became the husband and father he always deserved to be. At first, this Steve wants nothing to do with multiversal conflict. Why would he? He spent decades building something precious. His priority isn't saving universes, it's protecting his family. And honestly, who could blame him? But Doom's attacks don't care about personal happiness. When timelines begin collapsing, even Steve's peaceful reality starts breaking apart. Suddenly, the world he fought so hard to build begins disappearing right in front of him. That's when everything changes. The emotional journey of this Steve Rogers could become one of the strongest arcs in the entire film. At first, he desperately tries to save his family, not the multiverse, not reality, just the people he loves. Every decision is driven by fear of losing them, but as events unfold, he realizes something heartbreaking, there is no safe place left. Doom's plan threatens everyone, every family, every universe, every future. Eventually, Steve faces the same choice that has defined his entire life. Walk away or stand up. Protect only what belongs to him or fight for everyone. And if there's one thing we know about Steve Rogers, it's that he always chooses the harder path. That's why I believe this version eventually picks up his old shield again. Not because he wants to be Captain America, because he has no choice. The world needs him. Maybe for the first time in decades, he wears that symbol again, not as a soldier, not as an Avenger, but as a father willing to fight for a future worth leaving behind. Every battle becomes more emotional because he finally understands what he's protecting. When he steps onto the battlefield during the final act, audiences aren't cheering because Captain America returned. They're cheering because Steve Rogers remembered who he is. Then we arrive at the third Steve Rogers, the version that might steal every scene he's in, the Nomad Steve, the survivor, the warrior shaped by loss. This timeline branches after Civil War, creating a reality where Steve never reaches the events we know from Infinity War. Everything falls apart differently. Friends disappear. Alliances collapse. Institutions fail. Years pass. Steve keeps moving. No Avengers headquarters, no shield, no clear mission, just endless roads and endless battles. He becomes a legend wandering through a broken world, helping people wherever he can. Long hair, thick beard, weathered eyes. This isn't the optimistic Steve audiences first met. This is someone who has suffered for years. Someone who has seen dreams die. Yet despite everything, he keeps going. That's what makes him dangerous. He doesn't fight because he believes victory is guaranteed. He fights because surrender is unacceptable. I love this idea because it explores a side of Steve Rogers we've barely seen. What happens when hope isn't enough? What happens when idealism collides with reality over and over again? Nomad Steve survives those questions. He becomes more practical, more ruthless, more willing to make impossible decisions. But deep down, the same heart still exists. Hidden beneath scars and disappointment is the man who jumped on a grenade before becoming Captain America. That courage never disappeared. It simply evolved into something harder and stronger. According to this theory, Reed Richards eventually discovers the existence of powerful survivors scattered across damaged timelines, heroes who endured impossible circumstances and kept fighting anyway. To challenge Doom, Reed assembles a strike team unlike anything the multiverse has ever seen. Among them are warriors from shattered realities, including Nomad Steve. Imagine the visual. Reed Richards standing beside Thor, Gambit, and this battle-hardened version of Steve Rogers. Not because they're the strongest heroes, because they're the survivors, the people who understand exactly what Doom is capable of. This Steve becomes the primary action hero of the movie, the one leading dangerous missions, the one making impossible sacrifices, the one willing to walk into battles nobody expects to survive. And then comes the moment every fan would lose their mind over. Thor allows him to wield Mjolnir once again, not as a nostalgic callback, as proof that despite everything he has endured, Steve remains worthy. That single moment would say everything about his character. The world changed him. Pain changed him. Loss changed him. Yet none of those things corrupted him. He is still Steve Rogers, still worthy, still willing to put others first. Watching this version charge directly into Doom's forces with Mjolnir in one hand and determination in the other would instantly become one of the most iconic images in Marvel history. But the real genius of this theory isn't the existence of 3 Steve Rogers variants, it's the reason they matter. Somewhere during the movie's middle act, Reed Richards makes a shocking discovery. Doom's plan relies on manipulating temporal energy connected to anchor beings, individuals whose existence stabilizes entire realities. And somehow, across countless timelines, Steve Rogers repeatedly appears as one of those anchors. Different lives, different choices, different destinies, yet the same fundamental presence. Steve Rogers is a constant, a fixed point in history. That means the energy connecting these variants becomes incredibly valuable. Doom realizes it too. Suddenly, the three Steves aren't just heroes, they're targets. Old Steve represents knowledge. Young Steve represents hope. Nomad Steve represents sacrifice. Together, they embody everything Doom cannot understand. He believes power creates order. Steve proves character creates meaning. That's why Doom begins hunting them. Not because they're physically unstoppable, because their existence threatens the foundation of his perfect reality. Every timeline where Steve Rogers stood up against impossible odds serves as evidence that freedom matters more than control. The conflict becomes philosophical as much as physical. Doom wants a world where everyone follows his vision. Steve Rogers represents the opposite idea. The belief that people deserve the freedom to choose their own path, even when those choices do create chaos. And then comes the scene I think could become the emotional centerpiece of Avengers Doomsday. The first meeting between all three Steve Rogers variants. Just imagine it. 3 lives, 3 destinies, 3 versions of the same man standing face to face. For a moment, nobody speaks. They simply look at one another, each seeing roads not taken, possibilities lost, futures gained. Old Steve looks at young Steve and sees the happiness he once fought for. Young Steve looks at old Steve and sees the man he will eventually become. Meanwhile, Nomad Steve sees something entirely different. He sees the life he never had, the peace that escaped him. When old Steve quietly tells young Steve to enjoy every moment with Peggy because it's worth it, the line carries the weight of an entire lifetime. Then, young Steve realizes that happiness eventually leads to wisdom, that love survives, that his choice wasn't selfish. Finally, Nomad Steve breaks the silence with a statement that instantly explains everything about his life. You got the life, I got the war. Simple words, massive impact. In that moment, audiences understand the tragedy and beauty of every version. None of them are wrong. None of them failed. They simply walked different roads. Yet despite those differences, they remain the same man. That realization becomes the emotional fuel driving the final battle. As the story races toward its climax, Doom finally completes the creation of a battle world-style reality. Fragments of countless universes fuse together beneath his rule. This is the world he always wanted. A reality where he decides what survives and what disappears. Heroes from across existence gather for one final stand. And fittingly, each Steve Rogers plays a different role. Old Steve remains behind the front lines, coordinating resistance efforts and guiding heroes through impossible situations. His wisdom becomes the foundation of the entire strategy. Young Steve takes responsibility for protecting civilians and surviving heroes trapped within collapsing sectors of Battleworld. Every action reflects the family man he became. He understands what ordinary people lose when wars begin. Meanwhile, Nomad Steve leads the assault against Doom's strongest forces. He becomes the spear pointed directly at the heart of tyranny. Then, Marvel gives audiences the image they will remember forever. 3 Steve Rogers variants standing together. Old Steve, Captain Steve, Nomad Steve. Behind them are heroes from countless universes. In front of them stands Doom's army. It isn't just a battle. It's the visual representation of everything Steve Rogers has always represented. Courage, compassion, sacrifice, different forms, same soul. Even if only for a few seconds, that image alone could define the entire movie. The ending brings every piece together in a surprisingly beautiful way. Doom can only be defeated by restoring the natural flow of timelines. The merged reality must be undone. Universes must return to their proper places. It's a victory that comes with painful consequences because saying goodbye becomes inevitable. Old Steve understands this before anyone else. His journey is already complete. He lived the life he wanted. He helped save reality one final time. As timelines separate, he peacefully fades away, leaving behind gratitude instead of sadness. Young Steve returns to his timeline and his family. His reward isn't glory. It's another chance to live the life he nearly lost. But Nomad Steve makes a different choice. With his universe gone and nowhere left to return, he stays within Earth 616. Not as Captain America, not as a replacement for Sam Wilson, just as Steve Rogers. A man finally free to discover who he is beyond endless war. The final scene practically writes itself. Sam Wilson asks him what's next. It's a simple question. Yet for someone who spent years moving from one battle to another, it carries enormous meaning. Nomad. Steve smiles and admits that for the first time in a very long time, he doesn't know. And honestly, that's perfect. Because uncertainty isn't a weakness, it's possibility. It's a future. It's the one thing this version never had. If this theory becomes reality, Avengers. Doomsday won't just bring back Captain America. It will explore every side of Steve Rogers and remind us why he remains one of Marvel's greatest heroes. If you enjoyed this theory, leave a like, share, subscribe, and send your questions and theories in the comments section. I'm Liam Harrison from MovieCast, and thanks for staying with me until the very end.